Welcome to Walailak Global Program. This program aims to disseminate information about the latest development in our research and teaching and learning and others development that university might have achieved in recent months or weeks. I'm Associate Professor Dr. Surin Maisikrot, Vice President for Global Engagement and Faculty Development. With me today is Associate Professor Dr. David Harding, who is also the Deputy Director of the Center for International Affairs, who has been playing a very significant role in getting universities known globally. And in the past week or so, for the first time, Walailak University has been ranked by Times Higher Education in the category of impact ranking. And it's very important that we talk about this, particularly when, first of all, this university, Walailak University, has been focusing very heavily on social development, on social engagement. So university is very proud of the fact that this is for the first time that we are officially part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. So we have been part of this officially for the first time, and Dr. David Harding has been spearheading this internationalization efforts, including this one, the impact ranking that we has been recognized in not long ago. So first of all, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Professor Harding. You've been playing a very important role in this impact ranking that has been announced not long ago on the 21st of April. Could you first of all tell a little bit about the impact ranking itself, the measurement that they use?
Okay, yeah. So the Times Higher Education University Impact Rankings, there are many different rankings, and this one really aims to capture the individuality of a university and the work that it does in relation to its local, national, and international community. And the measurement is against the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. There are 17 of these, and universities are encouraged to submit evidence of their work in the different areas to Times Higher Education, who then make certain judgments about how good that evidence is, and then give the universities scores on all 17 of the individual SDGs, and give the university a score overall. So one of the SDGs, for example, is SDG 2. This is called, zero hunger. Okay, and the aim of that particular SDG from the UN is obviously to make sure that nobody in the world goes hungry. So in relation to the university, it's asking questions like, what kind of research is the university doing in the area, of food development? What kind of work are we doing with our local community to ensure that, they've got adequate food, that, the sort of farms in the area work well at good efficiency. Our university, for example, has a smart farm, and so we utilize the smart farm as a mechanism to test certain ideas and research possibilities out, and then we can disseminate what we learn from those trials to the local community and help them to improve things like their crop yields and so on.
The SDGs that Walailak University has done well include?
So the SDGs, we submitted for 7 out of the 17. This is very common. Very few universities are able to submit evidence for all of them unless they're very large institutions. But we submitted for SDG 2, this is zero hunger, SDG 3, this is good health, SDG 4, quality education. SDG 6, this is clean water and sanitation. SDG 9, which is about innovation. SDG 14, life below water. And finally, SDG 17, which is called partnership for the goals.
Right, and so could you explain a little bit the fact that we score well in this, as you mentioned, SDGs?
Okay, yeah.
What does that say about university?
Well, I mean, ultimately, there were, 4 SDGs out of the 7 where we were top 10 or better, in Thailand. And these were SDG 2, SDG 3, SDG 6, and SDG 14. And effectively what the impact rankings is telling us there is telling us that in these particular SDGs, the university has done a good job with its local community. I mean, for SDG 3, 6, and 14, we were actually ranked in the band 201 to 300, which when you consider that there are over 1,000 universities in the rankings, shows that the university has done particularly well on these SDGs, and shows our value really to the local community and how we're striving to improve their lives, because Walailak University was really set up by the local people. They wished to have a university in their province, in their area of the country where they could go to. They lobbied, for it to be built. And the university, in a sense, reflects the fact that it is, sort of by the community and for the community.
Yes, and we certainly, in part of the things that in our mission is really to serve the local community, but at the same time, this university aims to be internationally recognized. So I mean, from my point of view, this is very important exercise that we have been part of to be ranked by Times Impact Ranking, because it shows that not only have we done relatively satisfactorily locally, but now it is recognized internationally. So place that against other universities in Thailand and other probably university in the Asian region. What do you see there?
I mean, again, so our overall ranking, is 601 to 800. Again, there are about 1,200 universities ranked. So, we're sort of in the middle. But within the Asian region, we've done quite well. As I said, on several of the SDGs, we're top 10 within the country. But, Walailak has done really very well, considering that it's our first time. In relation to internationalization, the measurements that Times is using, are the UN SDGs. And so it's an internationally agreed, sort of measurement system. And it means that it's the same for everybody. And so even though the work might have, as it were, a strong local context, it's being done, as it were, within an international mindset. And that helps the university to be more international. It also helps our community to learn from best practice from elsewhere in the world, and that ultimately leads to the development of the whole nation. And that's the contribution that the university is making.
Could you go a little bit deeper very briefly into the metrics of the impact ranking, because it constitutes research, for example, and other areas as well?
Yeah, that's right. So it involves something called the theory of change. And effectively, this means that for any particular SDG, there are typically 4 different areas. One, as you say, is research. The other one is, stewardship, okay, and so on, and things like partnership. and these kind of elements. And then the rankings is asking a question, say in relation to some of the SDGs. Does your university, have medical facilities that are available for the local community?
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Walailak University, we have, as it were, the small hospital. It's more like a clinic that's available for the local community, and the brand new, much larger hospital is due to come online within about a year, and that will serve not only the local community, but the whole of the upper part of southern Thailand. And so it's asking questions, like that, and then we provide evidence of those questions. It might also ask questions, like, does your university provide scholarships for disadvantaged students so that they can get a head start in life, even though they come, from a background where perhaps none of their family members have ever been to university? And the answer to that question is absolutely yes. The university does provide scholarships. Something like about 20% or so of Walailak students are from a background where there's very little education in their family. And so the university really provides these types of students with a real opportunity in life that was denied to their parents. And I think that's something we're justly proud of.
Yes, indeed. And the fact that the employment rate of this university has been absolutely impressive. I mean, it's 90% plus. After 6 months of their graduation, they got jobs, and we have a very strong area like medical sciences, and so health sciences. I mean, in the Department of Chemistry, I think you can address this issue very well, which is that because this university is also quite strong in basic research. Impact ranking demonstrates the level, the capacity of these universities in terms of social engagement, social service. But at the same time, we also quite, strong in the area of basic research. I mean, your department, for example, has performed very well in terms of your high-level, internationally recognized research. Is there a tension between, from your point of view, is there a tension between basic research that you are involved in extensively and the kind of social engagement-based type of work of university?
That's an interesting question, because it is something that's often said that, that as it were, socially relevant research can't be high quality. I would reject that absolutely. That is not true. The two complement each other, because the reality is that the research that I'm doing, for example, yes, it produces very high quality outputs, but it also produces high quality graduates who are able to think independently, who are able to be creative, who are problem solvers, and who have high-end skills which the Thailand of today and tomorrow is going to need if we're going to develop as a nation. And so, my research feeds into, as it were, the social aspect, but perhaps in a slightly, indirect way that you wouldn't, consider, all the time. And I think we need to get away from that idea that these two, are in conflict with each other, and recognize the fact that both, are of value to the university. And indeed, you can still have high quality research that has a strong social focus. It's just exactly where that is. And as you say, in the basic sciences, in fact, we host things like the National Olympiads have been hosted here. So this gives, Thai students who are really good in science their first start. If they're really, really excellent, they get to go abroad and compete with people from around the world. We see from the Olympiad families that many of these people create lifelong friendships that, you know, turn out to be important, you know, for the countries going forward, as these people perhaps become important people within their respective countries, but they still maintain those ties from those younger days. The science faculty also does a huge amount of social outreach in terms of teaching, you know, kids in high school STEM skills, trying to get them interested in science, because it is difficult, you know. Nobody's saying it's an easy ride and stuff like that. And so we're doing both aspects.
Yeah.
And I think that's what every good university should be seeking to do, should be seeking to marry their high-end research with, you know, social impact.
And I agree, because I mean, producing quality, high quality graduates is already a great public service. And in fact, you know, in relation to this impact ranking, like in the UK, University of Manchester, they are one of the top universities in terms of their strength in basic research, but they score very well on the impact ranking as well. So you are absolutely right about, you know, two things go together actually. You know, and probably that's demonstrate a greater value of such a highly you know, recognized academic institutions.
And that's really true as well, because when the institution is very well recognized for its research, it often means that, you know, that government think tanks and so on listen to these people and take on board their advice for, you know, key decisions that the government might be making in certain areas. And so the research aspect is absolutely inseparable from, you know, the social aspect. And we need to keep that in mind when we think about how well a university does. In that regard, the fact that Walailak is, comparatively speaking, a small university, and the impact rankings is absolutely measuring how good we are in research, and we score at the same level, you know, as Princess Songkhla University, Thammasat University, some of the much older, more established universities. I think it shows the great strides that the university has made in a comparatively short period of time.
Right. Are there anything else that you would like to add to the issue of impact ranking?
I mean, I think one of the things to remember is that actually, yes, it's been a good year, you know, for Walailak University, that we've got ranked for the first time. But it's actually been a good year for the whole country. For the first time in the history of these rankings, Thailand has 2 universities that are ranked in the top 100. Chulalongkorn University is ranked 23rd in the whole world. And the competition is fierce, you know, for these rankings. So to do that well is a remarkable achievement by the whole Thai academic system. And it shows that, you know, the universities are really doing a huge amount of work that perhaps was unrecognized before, because that's what the impact rankings really does. The impact rankings allows universities to be who they are, and it allows us to demonstrate that beyond simple measurements like, you know, how many people have you graduated this year, what fields have they graduated in, you can draw a broader line around what is the overall impact of your university and what is your university doing to make the world a better place. Because ultimately, that's what the SDGs are all about. It's asking the question, how can we develop the world in a sustainable way? We already know through the climate crisis that there are significant problems with our current way that we tend to develop nations, and this needs to change. And universities, with the knowledge that they create, are going to be at the forefront of trying to change the way we develop and improving, you know, sort of government systems around the world. And that will hopefully be for the betterment of all mankind.
And talking about ranking, well, this is you've been playing a very important role in the ranking efforts on the part of Walailak University, and this is not the only category of ranking that we are focusing on. We have also applied for QS. We are planning to also apply for the World University ranking again by times higher education. Probably, can you venture into other areas of ranking a bit?
So I mean, that's it. So ultimately, things like the QS, the regular QS World University rankings, and the Times Higher Education World University rankings, these guys really focus very strongly on research. So they're measuring things like, how much research output have you produced? How much of it is cited? Is it cited a lot or is it cited a little? It's also asking things like, what are your sort of collaborative partners? How many of these have you got? And so on. So the focus is very much on research, and it's not really measuring, anything else. There is an attempt to measure teaching, but it tends to use broad measurements of number of students per staff member and so on. But again, it is well recognized that teaching is notoriously difficult to measure, and perhaps the historic focus of most ranking systems on research is because it's easier to get metrics off various databases and whatnot to try to broadly judge how well each university does. But the negative about these rankings is that they tend to favor the long established universities from the global north. That's the wealthier nations. I mean, we're now in a situation where I think for both the Times Higher Education and the QS, there's been about 2 or 3 different universities, in the top position, for like the last decade. There hasn't really been much change. And that's because research requires huge investment. And universities like the University of Oxford, the big universities in America, MIT, Harvard, Yale, these guys have huge endowments, billions of dollars of research income that helps them, to drive their research output. And universities from places like Thailand often find themselves suffering in those rankings. But the impact rankings in that way allows a different look on how universities are doing. And one of the interesting things in that ranking is the fact that there are universities from Thailand, from India, from Malaysia, from many different areas of the world that do really quite well in the impact rankings, but perhaps not so well in the World University rankings. So you have to remember that each ranking has its own strengths and weaknesses, and you have to ask yourself what it's trying to measure. I think the final thing I would say about rankings is, it's important to use them to sort of roughly judge where you are in the world, but it's really critical not to use them too much as a mechanism to define entirely your organization's success. Each university has its own particular thing that it's trying to do, and that will vary from one university to another, and so we shouldn't get too caught up in trying to, as it were, turn a university in Thailand into an MIT or something like that.
But absolutely, from what I have observed, the measurement or the metrics that is used by Times, for example, is quite rigorous, and it's quite very rigorous, very transparent. and very scientific indeed. So I'm very proud of the fact that we are part of that, and absolutely, this is when we talk about going international. We want to be part of this internationalization of higher education. We want to be part of this, community of higher education institutions. This is one way that we can't, we can't deny. This is one way that they have to, we have to be part of. This is that's sort of a scheme that we can't avoid being part of. So, yes, absolutely, you're right. That we should not be too uptight about this. But certainly, so far, having been part of this as well, that I feel that we using these as guides. It kind of help us see where we are and which direction and how far we have to yet move. So it's very useful.
Oh yeah,
exercise.
I mean, and that's it. And I think that's the way that that you can use the rankings. It's really a mechanism in which to benchmark yourself. They are important as far as students are concerned, and they are a good way of the university broadly seeing how well it's doing compared to its international peers.
Okay. Professor Harding, once again, thank you so much for your contribution to the program today. And of course, we expect to see you many more times in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.